Let's say you're a hopeful young man living in Michigan with dreams of becoming a filmmaker. And let's say one of your childhood friends has designs on being an actor, and he looks like this. Chiseled chin, classical dashing, lead actor good looks. Would you make a thrilling adventure film that took advantage of your friend's natural charm and matinee idol good looks? Or would you make an ultra-violent, goopy, deeply inappropriate horror film that allowed you to utterly beat the shit out of that handsome friend's face? That's the question on today's episode of Deadly Duos. Of all the places that seem too far away from Hollywood to be a viable place to make a movie, Michigan might feel like the farthest. But Sam Raimi wasn't going to let that slow him down. Like George Romero with Pittsburgh and John Waters with Baltimore, Raimi would just have to put his home on the map himself. To achieve this seemingly impossible task, Raimi formed a reliable team around him, from his brothers, Ted and Ivan, to family friend Rob Tappert, to his iconic 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88. Honestly, if we were actually looking for the most prolific pairing with Sam Raimi, it would be that Oldsmobile.
My mother gave it to my brother Sam, and he wound up putting it in every single movie he ever made, including this television show. Say hello to the 21st century. Yeah!
But there is a different beat-up old relic that also worked with Sam Raimi and is even more enjoyable to discuss. Without a doubt, his most beloved co-conspirator is actor Bruce Campbell. Their cinema adventures began early in their lives, and not in the way you might expect an iconic horror duo's career to begin. Raimi and his circle of friends were all big fans of slapstick comedy, in particular, The Three Stooges. So when they started making short films in the early 1970s, many of them were broad comedies. 1972's Out West was a 2-minute short comedy western gunfight scene, followed by films like The Great Bogus Monkey Pignut Swindle and Attack of the Pillsbury Doughboy. When Sam Raimi decided to start taking himself seriously as a filmmaker and attempt to get a feature made, he knew that a low-budget horror film was probably his best bet. As a way of showing possible investors that they had the potential to complete a feature film, in 1978, Raimi and Company produced the short film Within the Woods. The film is a 31-minute short version of what would eventually become Raimi and Campbell's breakout hit, The Evil Dead. And it worked. The film helped them secure the funding they needed to go off into the woods and shoot one of the craziest indie horror films ever made. Rather than leaning on Bruce Campbell's good looks and have his lead character of Ash be a classic hero, Raimi actually made Ash a mostly ineffective punching bag who barely survives the movie, and, depending on how you read the ending, maybe doesn't survive it at all. Raimi's distinctive visual style, coupled with the shocking moments of gore and a very disturbing sequence with a tree attacking a woman, got the movie a great deal of attention. It even garnered the movie a positive review from horror master Stephen King. The film made nearly $3 million in theaters, and sure enough, their careers were launched. They teamed up again right away for the very next film, an unusual hybrid of comedy, crime, and horror called Crime Wave. From a script by the Coen brothers, the movie had a classic Coen crime structure to it, but the sensibilities of the Coen brothers and Sam Raimi combined proved to be a bit too much for audiences in 1985. After the failure of Crime Wave, Raimi knew he needed something that would get attention and it would put him back on track. That film would end up being Evil Dead 2. Released 6 years after the original, Evil Dead 2 operates as a remake for the first half of the film before diving into new material for the second half. Campbell returned in the lead role of Ash, and this time around, Raimi decided to ease off on some of the darker horror and add in some of the slapstick comedy he loved so much. The result was one of the most beloved cult horror films of all time. In the sequel, instead of being an ineffectual victim, Ash becomes something of an unconventional hero. However, Campbell's broadly comedic performance fit the wild tone of the film perfectly, and he balanced that unconventional heroism, the blustery machismo, and the slapstick comic timing brilliantly. The film still stands as the rare example of a horror sequel that is also a parody of its original film, and it does so without diminishing the power or legacy of its predecessor. This oddball horror comedy, with its chainsaw-wielding dancing corpses and men battling their own severed hands, was a surprise mild success, nearly doubling its budget and getting positive reviews from the New York Times and Roger Ebert. The film became such a cult phenomenon on home video that it arguably surpassed the popularity of its progenitor. With a cliffhanger ending that threw Ash into the medieval past, another Evil Dead movie seemed certain. But both Raimi and Campbell would try their hands at other projects first. Campbell starred in the Larry Cohen and William Lustig exploitation film Maniac Cop, in which Raimi had a cameo as a news reporter, and they both appeared in small roles in 1989's Intruder, a supermarket slasher from their mutual friend and Evil Dead 2 alumnus Scott Spiegel. Raimi's next film was Darkman, a modern gothic hero film he created out of frustration at not being able to make a screen version of the beloved radio and comics hero The Shadow. Starring Liam Neeson as a disfigured scientist who invents a way to disguise himself as other people, the film ends with Neeson's character disappearing into a crowd as an anonymous citizen, played by none other than Bruce Campbell, who wasn't a big enough star at the time to headline the movie. The film was a big success, tripling its budget at the box office and eventually spawning 2 direct-to-video sequels. Universal was happy with Raimi's work on Darkman, happy enough to bankroll the 3rd entry in the Evil Dead franchise, Army of Darkness. The budget leapt up from past entries all the way to $11 million, but that was understandable given the scope of the project. Like Evil Dead 2 reinvented itself as a comedy after the relentless terror of the first, the 3rd film in the series was a period fantasy epic, complete with armies and monsters and a dark doppelganger version of Ash. What did remain from the last film, however, was the weird sense of humor, displayed in sequences like the Gulliver's Travel style battle with a dozen tiny ashes. The movie was a moderate success, and it actually raised the profiles of both the director and the actor, and they pursued their successes separately for several years. Raimi found mixed success in the mainstream with Quick and the Dead, in which Campbell had a cameo that ended up on the cutting room floor, for Love of the Game, and the 1-2 punch team-up with Billy Bob Thornton in A Simple Plan, for which Thornton earned an Oscar nomination, and The Gift, which Thornton wrote based on his grandmother. Meanwhile, Campbell found a home on TV with a season of the cult western sci-fi comedy The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., and recurring roles on Lois and Clark and Ellen. They would work together on TV when Raimi's production company created Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and Xena: Warrior Princess, series that Campbell appeared on as Autolycus, King of Thieves. But even bigger things were on the near horizon for both of them. Raimi was hired to bring Spider-Man to the big screen, and the result was 2 beloved modern superhero classics and a 3rd entry that baffled audiences with its bizarre tone, which might actually be recognizable to fans of the Evil Dead franchise. Also recognizable was Campbell, who popped up in different cameos in all 3 films. Campbell also got busy and popular on the USA series Burn Notice as lovable ex-spy Sam Axe. Campbell was so busy that he didn't even appear in Raimi's follow-up to the Spider-Man series with 2009's Drag Me to Hell. It was a return to form for Raimi with its comedic horror and over-the-top gore, but it still stands as the only full horror film Raimi has made without a Campbell appearance. 2013 brought the remake of Evil Dead, which both Raimi and Campbell produced, and which had a short, unconnected cameo from Bruce Campbell as the original Ash in a post-credits appearance. And then, finally, after years of fan anticipation and years of Campbell denials, Ash was to fully return to the screen, but this time it would be the small screen. The TV network Starz, which already aired the Raimi-produced Spartacus, signed Raimi, Rob Tapert, and Bruce Campbell to a contract for a 5-year run of a TV series called Ash vs. Evil Dead. The series continues the adventures of selfish asshole Ash Williams, now a washed-up has-been still working at a box store and reliving his glory days while trying to impress his youthful co-workers when ancient evil strikes once again. Raimi directed the pilot episode and produced the series for 3 glorious, hilarious, blood-soaked seasons until the 5-season contract was tragically cut short. Is this the end for Ash Williams? Will Campbell and Raimi work together again, or have we seen the last of their delightful team-ups? Well, the answer is, it's definitely not the end in both cases. While Campbell loves to say he's never playing Ash again, it has already been confirmed that Ash will return again in video game form with Campbell voicing. And as long as Campbell and Raimi remain friends, and Raimi keeps making movies, it's very likely we will see Campbell pop up in them in some capacity. But will we ever get another wildly inventive, hilariously graphic horror film from this beloved team? Only time will tell. what kind of film would you like to see from them in their triumphant return? Let us know. That's it for this episode of Deadly Duos. We'll see you again soon with more scare pairs.